Hey everybody, what it do? It is your boy Amusement Media, and today we're going to be talking about an absolutely awesome roller coaster located in both North and South Carolina. Back in July, I was fortunate enough to visit a park that has been on my radar since I first started getting into roller coasters, particularly because of its tallest coaster. I'm of course talking about Fury 325 at Carowinds. I know it's been a few months since I've ridden this world-class thrill machine, but this week I decided to sit down and take a close look at my favorite roller coaster from the Carowinds trip. If you go on to enjoy today's video, make sure you leave a like and comment down below how much you love Fury, or just tell me how much you want to get on it. If you want to see more of my content, make sure to smack that subscribe button. It really makes my day whenever I see new subs, and that way you won't miss any future videos. Also, make sure to follow me on Instagram, and without further ado, let's get into this review. Back in 2014, Carowinds shocked the world when they announced Fury 325. It debuted the next year to rave reviews from both enthusiasts and the general public. Fury was the 6th gigacoaster out of what is now 7, and one of only 3 from manufacturer B&M. For those who don't know, a gigacoaster has a height or drop of 300 to 399 feet, which is 91 to 122 meters. In case you don't know much about roller coasters, this is absolutely massive. These rides are some of the most expensive coasters a park can buy, but offer insanely high thrills. Fury is often considered the best or second best giga coaster, so I'll make sure to discuss the topic in a little bit. Throughout the video, I'll be giving you some history and fun facts on Fury 325, as well as going through an element by element analysis of the ride. I'll also be giving it a score out of 10, so make sure you stick around to the end to see all those great things. Fury 325 has the typical hyper/giga trains used by B&M, where there's 8 rows of 4 across. They have the absolutely amazing clamshell restraints that are oh so comfortable. These things do come down throughout the ride, but you can still feel all the forces and they aren't uncomfortable by any means. And if you want to use one of your hands to hold it up, it's really easy to. They also have seatbelts because we are talking about Cedar Fair after all. Cedar Fair had already started giving Carowinds some good additions with Intimidator, but Fury was the coaster that really put this park on the map. Fury has and still is doing incredible things for Carowinds, and is the main reason I think you should all try to visit the park. Now for some quick random facts. If you've ever been to Carowinds, you've probably noticed the abnormal amount of planes that fly over the park. So because of the park's height and proximity to Charlotte Douglas Airport, they had to get approval from the Federal Aviation Association. And yes, that mouthful of a name is a real thing. I suppose that is common sense, but I'm guessing most of you didn't know that. But hey, now you do. Fury also takes up around 8.4 acres of land and is 6,602 feet or 2,012 meters long. This makes it the longest steel coaster we have not only here in America, but in all of the Western Hemisphere, also making it the 4th longest steel coaster in the world and the 5th longest overall. For those wondering what the longest coaster in America is, that goes to the legendary Beast at Kings Island, and the longest in the world is Japan's Steel Dragon 2000 by a long shot. Before we get into the layout, let's take a look at the color scheme and theme. Oh my gosh, I'm a poet and I didn't even know it. The ride has one of the best color schemes of any roller coaster with those beautiful white supports and iconic teal track. It also has a lime green spine, which is pretty unique and looks great. Fun fact, 4 of the 7 giga coasters are blue, and in my opinion, Fury has the best color scheme of them. Fury 325 is loosely themed to Hornets. Now I say loosely because it does have a sick entrance sign, and there are some things reminiscent of honeycombs, but other than that there isn't a ton of theming. Unless you count the name of the gift shop? The lack of theming isn't a huge deal with this ride though, because if a coaster reaches a certain level of greatness, it can stand perfectly fine without theming, and Fury is presented better than 99% of other roller coasters. If I had to give a score solely off presentation, I'd actually give it a perfect 10, but if I had to give a score for theming, it'd probably be around a 5. Though this ride is absolutely beautiful and perfectly set in the surrounding area. Now about the name, I know some people love to complain when parks put stats in the coaster's name, but most people call this ride Fury anyways. I think Fury is a really cool name actually, and the 325 almost makes it more iconic, so I don't really mind this. Now to those questioning why it's randomly themed to a Hornet but named Fury, here's the answer. The inspiration actually comes from the times of the American Revolution, when Charlotte was a quote-unquote hornet's nest of rebellion. Despite the colors of the track matching the colors of the Charlotte Hornets logo, the park kinda denies that the NBA team had any influence over it. But I think it's safe to assume that they probably did. Especially because the team's original name was restored from the Charlotte Bobcats back to the Charlotte Hornets for the 2014 to 2015 NBA season, which is ironically the same year Fury opened. Come on, look me in the eyes and tell me it's a coincidence. I'm waiting. Either way, I think there's a cool idea behind this ride, and I actually think it's cool to take influence from professional sports teams, as long as it's not the Steelers. Oh wait. Alright, now let's get into the ride experience. First off, you pass the epic entry sign and enter into what is most likely the longest line in the park. But then again, it has the best capacity of 1,470 riders per hour, and their dispatches are so good that it's not a painful line to wait in. Fury Screw is absolutely amazing, so I just have to give a shout out to all you awesome people who work it. You board the train from the right and sit in those comfy seats with the green clamshell restraints. You then roll out of the station onto a little bit of straight track before the lift. If you look below the bottom of the lift hill, you can actually see Firehawk's old trains from Kings Island, which are being used to help out with Nighthawk. You then ascend the 325-foot lift hill. Fury is actually the tallest roller coaster that uses the traditional method of getting coasters up to max height, a lift hill. There are a few coasters taller than Fury, such as Cedar Point's Top Thrill Dragster and Great Adventure's King Ka, but all of those rides use a launch to get to their insane heights. And believe me, you can feel that height on Fury. Anyone who's a little uneasy with heights will absolutely be clenching their lap bars and praying to get to the bottom of the drop. You tower over the entire park and get views of Theme Park Predictions' neighborhood. You can also see downtown Charlotte off in the distance, which is super cool. But you won't have much time to take in this view because you are suddenly plunging 80 degrees down a 320-foot drop. This drop feels long, and in the best way. It really feels like it's going on forever, which is just so fun. If you've ridden Orion, it feels pretty similar, and I assume the same with Leviathan. Fury's drop definitely lasts a little longer than all the other Gigas, but I still slightly prefer Orion's. That might be a bit of an unpopular opinion, but they're just so similar, and Orion's feels a little bit better, probably because it's a bit steeper. This drop has more whip and more Flowjector airtime towards the back of the train, but up front has great views and insane wind. Those are two huge pluses about this ride in the front. The views are awesome, but even better is the wind. Your eyes will tear up in the front row, and if your mouth is open, the spit will definitely not stay in. That sounds kinda gross out loud, but trust me, it's more fun in person. Even in the front, you have some good floater, if not Flowjector airtime, but the air is superior in the back. You do get a good burst of positive G's in this first valley that'll cause you a solid gray out. This is also where you reach your max speed of 95 miles per hour. You then haul up into this 192-foot bank turn, more specifically called a horseshoe. You have so much speed into this element that it hits you with a fair amount of intensity. You get some solid laterals twisting in and then out, as well as a gray out through this element. I do have to say I only got 2 rides on Fury, and both were later in the day, so you might not always gray out here. After these first 2 elements, Fury stays really low to the ground. This is one of the major things people love to rave about with Fury. Giga coasters really shine when they're low to the ground for that insane sense of speed, and Fury does it better than all of them, other than maybe I-305. After the horseshoe, you go into 2 S-bends, the first curving to the right and the second to the left. You can feel the ride's incredible speed and get some pretty unexpected airtime. When you are suddenly twisted to the side, it gives you a nice burst of laterals and floater airtime. I was not expecting this, so it was a really pleasant surprise. That's one of the reasons I love Fury so much. Not only is it really tall, fast, and long, it also has a lot more and a lot better airtime than I was expecting. These S-bends are actually really fun elements and are an unexpected highlight of the ride for me. And the second S-bend goes right over a path leading into the park entrance, so not only do guests get great views of this ride coming into the park, but it's also fun to whiz past all the guests standing below you. You then curve up into the iconic treble clef turnaround. This is the only true element of its type, and it's by far the most fun turnaround I've ever experienced. The only elements remotely close to it are Orion's turnaround and some of the recent banked hills like on Candemonium and Orion. Orion's turnaround is not nearly as good as Fury's though, because you go into it the way Fury exits, so you don't get to experience what this element excels at, and that is the airtime on the way down. You get some good laterals mixed with Flowjector airtime. It almost feels like graceful ejector, if that makes any sense. A lot of Fury's airtime is more on the ejector side of the scale than floater, which is part of the reason why this ride is so fun. Alright, back to the treble clef. It's called that because of its shaping from certain angles as you've seen in the video. You twist up from the left and then dive down while straightening out. This is right next to the path leading into the park entrance, so there's a lot of great photo ops for it. You then go right under that path and have some cool hexagon shaped lights. Fury then rises about 100 feet up into another fun S-curve. I wouldn't say it's as forceful as the 2 from earlier, but it gives some nice floater and laterals, which is still a pretty unique sensation. You then level out and head up into the first of 3 smaller camelbacks. Unlike the small camelbacks on most B&M hypers, these give strong airtime. It's just something about these Gigas, man, not like you'd expect that from a 300-foot coaster or anything. Now this first camelback is about 111 feet off the ground, but it really doesn't feel that high. It unfortunately is trimmed, but you still fly over it and get a good burst of floater airtime throughout the train, and even stronger airtime towards the back. The helix following this camelback would probably be insanely intense without the trim, just like the one on Orion. This helix is by far the least impressive moment of Fury, but you still have solid speed and get a nice near miss with the support. You then end the ride off by zigzagging back to the brakes with 2 more camelback hills. These are a great way to end it all off because they both offer sustained flow ejector airtime throughout the train. They feel similar to some of the speed hills B&M has done, just a little less drawn out and maybe a bit stronger. You also do get a bit of laterals with these turns, and it's fun not to just have hills directly in line with the brakes. These camelbacks feel about equal to each other, and I found them pretty similar in both the front and back. You then make one final hop up into the brakes, getting one last pop of floater airtime, which is definitely the weakest airtime on the ride, but hey, I'll still take it. I think it's kind of funny how Fury just has a bit of floater while Orion has a strong pop of ejector coming into the brake run. Fury is a long coaster, like I said before, and you can absolutely feel that. For me, a ride doesn't have to be long to be great, but a ride that excels in length can be truly elite. Fury is just such a fun coaster, and it is actually elite in just about every category. I'd say with confidence that this is the best coaster built by Bolliger and Mabyard, and they should be pretty darn proud of it. It's also a very smooth coaster, which you can just add to the list of things it does so well. I've heard a few minor complaints that it has a slight rattle, and when I get more rides on it in the future I might notice it, but it was so smooth I just couldn't tell. And I've said this before, but B&M rattles aren't bad at all. I just look right past them because they don't really take away from a ride unless you let them. Not that Fury really has one anyway. Now for the big question, is it the best Giga Coaster? I think it's easily in the top 2 with Intimidator 305. It just depends if you're more into pure insanity and non-stop intensity, or a more graceful airtime machine with some great speed. I think it's obvious that for a final score, I'll be giving Fury a 5. I mean, it's alright. Kidding, it's a perfect 10 out of 10. This ride really doesn't have any flaws and perfectly does what it sets out to do and more. Fury 325 is one of the most hyped up coasters by enthusiasts, and for good reason because it's near perfection. It's not the most aggressive ride out there, so obviously don't go in expecting something on the level of an RMC, but it is pretty freaking good overall. Even though I prefer Steel Vengeance, it has its flaws. Sure, they are easy to look past, but some people will get off their first few rides thinking it's overhyped. But I think that's really hard to do with Fury. As long as you're expecting a Giga Coaster, your expectations will probably be exceeded. Alright, thank you guys for watching today's in-depth review of Fury 325 at Carowinds. Like I said at the beginning, this ride is worth the trip to Carowinds alone, and I highly recommend you get out to ride it. If you couldn't tell, I think it lives up to the hype for sure. It was one of my highest bucket list coasters, and I'm so glad to have checked it off. Now I'll just have to come back sometime when the park is open late enough for night rides. Make sure to let me know if you've ridden Fury and what you think of it and what you thought of the video. Now as always guys, stay safe, keep riding coasters, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace!